Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Yes, that is right." The leading priest accused Jesus of many things. So Pilate asked Jesus another question. He said, "You can see that these people are accusing you of many things. Why don't you answer?" But Jesus still did not answer, and this really surprised Pilate. Jesus stood before Pilate, the governor, who asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Yes, that's right." Then, when the leading priest and the older Jewish leaders made their accusations against Jesus, he said nothing. So Pilate said to him, "Don't you hear all these charges they are making against you? Why don't you answer?" But Jesus did not say anything, and this really surprised the governor. Then the whole group stood up and led Jesus away to Pilate. They began to accuse Jesus and said to Pilate, "We caught this man trying to change the thinking of our people. He says we should not pay taxes to Caesar. He calls himself the Messiah, a king." Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Yes, what you say is true." Pilate said to the leading priests and the people, "I find nothing wrong with this man." But they kept on saying, "His teaching is causing trouble all over Judea. He began in Galilee, and now he's here." Pilate heard this and asked if Jesus was from Galilee. He learned that Jesus was under Herod's authority. Herod was in Jerusalem at that time, so Pilate sent Jesus to him. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very happy. He had heard all about him, and he wanted to meet him for a long time. Herod wanted to see a miracle, so he was hoping that Jesus would do one. He asked him many questions, but Jesus said nothing. The leading priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, shouting things against Jesus. Then Herod and his soldiers laughed at him. They made fun of him by dressing him in clothes like kings wear. Then Herod sent him back to Pilate. In the past, Pilate and Herod had always been enemies, but on that day, they became friends. Then the guards took Jesus from Caiaphas' house to the Roman governor's palace. It was early in the morning. The Jews there would not go inside the palace. They did not want to make themselves unclean, because they wanted to eat the Passover meal. So Pilate went outside to them and asked, "What do you say this man has done wrong?" They answered, "He is a bad man. That is why we brought him to you." Pilate said to them, "You take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." The Jewish leaders answered, "But your law does not allow us to punish anyone by killing them." This was to show the truth of what Jesus said about how he would die. Then Pilate went back inside the palace. He called for Jesus and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "Is that your own question, or did other people tell you about me?" Pilate said, "I'm not a Jew. It was your own people and their leading priest who brought you before me. What have you done wrong?" Jesus said, "My kingdom does not belong to this world. If it did, my servants would fight so that I would not be handed over to the Jewish leaders. No, my kingdom is not an earthly one." Pilate said, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You are right to say that I am a king. I was born for this, to tell people about the truth. That is why I came into the world, and everyone who belongs to the truth listens to me." Pilate said, "What is truth?" Then he went out to the Jewish leaders again and said to them, "I can find nothing against this man, but it is one of your customs for me to free one prisoner to you at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to free this king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not him! Let Barabbas go free!" Barabbas was a rebel. Every year at the Passover time, the governor would free one prisoner, whichever one the people wanted. There was a man in prison at that time named Barabbas. He and the rebels with him had been put in prison for committing murder during a riot. The people came to Pilate and asked him to free a prisoner, as he always did. Pilate asked them, "Do you want me to free the king of the Jews?" Pilate knew that the leading priest had handed Jesus over to him because they were jealous of him. But the leading priest persuaded the people to ask Pilate to free Barabbas, not Jesus. Pilate asked the people again, "So what should I do with this man you call the king of the Jews?" The people shouted, "Kill him on a cross!" Pilate asked, "Why? What wrong has he done?" But the people shouted louder and louder, "Kill him on a cross!" Pilate wanted to please the people, so he set Barabbas free for them, and he told the soldiers to beat Jesus with whips. Then he handed him over to the soldiers to be killed on a cross. Every year at Passover time, the governor would free one prisoner, whichever one the people wanted him to free. At that time, there was a man in prison who was known to be very bad. His name was Barabbas. When a crowd gathered, Pilate said to them, "I will free one man for you. Which one do you want me to free, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" Pilate knew that they had handed Jesus over to him because they were jealous of him. While Pilate was sitting there in the place for judging, his wife sent a message to him. It said, "Don't do anything with that man. He is not guilty. Last night I had a dream about him, and it troubled me very much." But the leading priests and the older Jewish leaders told the people to ask for Barabbas to be set free and for Jesus to be killed. Pilate said, "I have Barabbas and Jesus. Which one do you want me to set free for you?" The people answered, "Barabbas!" Pilate asked, "So what should I do with Jesus, the one called the Messiah?" All the people said, "Kill him on a cross!" Pilate asked, "Why do you want me to kill him? What wrong has he done?" But they shouted louder, "Kill him on a cross!" Pilate saw that there was nothing he could do to make the people change. In fact, it looked as if there would be a riot. So he took some water and washed his hands in front of them all. He said, "I am not guilty of this man's death. You are the ones who are doing it." The people answered, "We will take full responsibility for his death. You could blame us and even our children." Then Pilate set Barabbas free, and he told some soldiers to beat Jesus with whips. Then he handed him over to the soldiers to be killed on a cross. Pilate called all the people together with the leading priest and the Jewish leaders. He said to them, "You brought this man to me. You said he was trying to change the people. But I judged him before you all, and have not found him guilty of the things you say he has done. Herod didn't find him guilty either. He sent him back to us. Look, he has done nothing bad enough for the death penalty. So, after I punish him a little, I will let him go free." Every year at the Passover festival, Pilate had to release one prisoner to the people. But they all shouted, "Kill him! Let Barabbas go free!" Barabbas was a man who was in jail for starting a riot in the city and for murder. Pilate wanted to let Jesus go free. So again, Pilate told them that he would let him go. But they shouted again, "Kill him! Kill him on a cross!" A third time, Pilate said to the people, "Why? What wrong has he done? He is not guilty. I could find no reason to kill him. So I will let him go free after I punish him a little." But the people continued to shout. They demanded that Jesus be killed on a cross. Their shouting got so loud that Pilate decided to give them what they wanted. They wanted Barabbas to go free, the one who was in jail for starting a riot and for murder. Pilate let Barabbas go free, and he handed Jesus over to be killed. This is what the people wanted. Then Pilate ordered that Jesus be taken away and whipped. The soldiers made a crown from thorny branches and put it on his head. Then they put a purple robe around him. They kept coming up to him saying, "Hail to the King of the Jews!" And they hit him in the face. Again, Pilate came out and said to the Jewish leaders, "Look, I am bringing Jesus out to you. I want you to know that I find nothing I can charge him with." Then Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to the Jews, "Here is the man." When the leading priest and the Jewish guards saw Jesus, they shouted, "Kill him on a cross! Kill him on a cross!" But Pilate answered, "You take him and nail him to a cross yourselves. I find nothing I can charge him with." The Jewish leaders answered, "We have a law that says he must die, because he said he is the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was more afraid. So he went back inside the palace and asked Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus did not answer him. Pilate said, "You refuse to speak to me. Remember, I have the power to make you free or to kill you on a cross." Jesus answered, "The only power you have over me is the power given to you by God. So the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." After this, Pilate tried to let Jesus go free, but the Jewish leaders shouted, "Anyone who makes himself a king is against Caesar. So if you let this man go free, that means you are not Caesar's friend." When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out to the place called the Stone Pavement. In Aramaic, the name is Gabbatha. Pilate sat down on the judge's seat there. It was now almost noon, on preparation day of Passover week. Pilate said to the Jews, "Here is your king." They shouted, "Take him away! Take him away! Kill him on a cross!" Pilate asked them, "Do you want me to kill your king on a cross?" The leading priests answered, "The only king we have is Caesar." So Pilate handed Jesus over to them to be killed on a cross. Pilate's soldiers took Jesus into the governor's palace, called the Praetorium. They called all the other soldiers together. They put a purple robe on Jesus, made a crown from thorny branches, and put it on his head. Then they began shouting, "Welcome, King of the Jews!" They kept on beating his head with a stick and spitting on him. Then they bowed down on their knees and pretended to honor him as a king. After they finished making fun of him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him again. Then they led him out of the palace to be killed on a cross. Then Pilate's soldiers took Jesus into the governor's palace. All the soldiers gathered around him. They took off Jesus' clothes and put a red robe on him. Then they made a crown from thorny branches and put it on his head. And they put a stick in his right hand. Then they bowed before him, making fun of him. They said, "We salute you, King of the Jews!" They spit on him. Then they took his stick and kept hitting him on the head with it. After they finished making fun of him, the soldiers took off the robe and put his own clothes on him again. Then they led him away to be killed on the cross. The men guarding Jesus made fun of him and beat him. They covered his eyes so that he could not see them. Then they hit him and said, "Be a prophet and tell us who hit you." And they shouted all kinds of insults at him.